Hello again and welcome. Over the years I've been asked many times about the correct speed to turn this project or that project, whether it be a spindle or a bowl or whatever. And my stock answer, with a few caveats, normally is if you turn as fast as you feel comfortable turning, you'll get a better result and also a more pleasant experience in the majority of cases, but there are obviously exceptions. What I intend to do is to put various sizes in both weight, length and size in general on the lathe and see how different speeds affect the way it reacts and the type of turning experience we get with different speeds. It is not a definitive guide, like nothing I ever do is. It is merely my opinion, my suggestions if you like, and my thoughts on the matter, and you'll be able to see hopefully the outcome of various speeds on various bits of wood. This video will most probably be of very little or even no interest to the more experienced turner. It is really aimed at the beginning turner and the turner that hasn't been turning too long and is looking for a guide. I will say, and I'll put a link in the description to one of these, there are some great PDF files which are available free for download on the internet, which give recommended speeds for bowls and indeed spindles. Now these aren't targets, they are recommendations to give you an idea of what speed range you should be looking at. But there are, as I say, an awful lot of variables, whether the wood is wet, whether it's balanced, the type of wood with regard to the density in different parts of it. You can't cover everything. I think the overriding factor is using common sense and obviously being as safe as you possibly can. So without further ado, what I'll do is change the camera angle and we'll go through the effects of speed on your turning. What I've got on here is a bit of beech. It's 130 by 60 mil and it weighs 0.3 of a kilo. A very small piece of wood that we're going to put between centres and see what speed is the right speed to turn at. I'll say at this stage I very rarely turn above 2,500 revs, to be honest with you, because I just don't feel the need. Occasionally I do. Anyhow, always make sure that your lathe is at the lowest speed you can possibly get it when you turn it off, so that when you turn it on you don't get a shock. So the actual speed revs, not everybody has a readout, but you get to know what's good. Now this is obviously not round, but I can actually turn this up to whatever speed I like without getting any wobble. Okay, so I'm doing 3,700 revs now. No need to turn at that speed. But let's see what happens if I turn or start to round it at a low speed. Even a small piece of wood like this. Listen to the tool. Not a very pleasant experience. And as you can see, because we're turning air, it's clunkety clunkety clunk, it's biting away at the wood because we are turning air. However, if you turn the speed up, let's say to just over 2,000 revs, now listen to this and look at the difference in the cut. It's almost like turning a solid piece of wood without any air, and the quality of finish is much improved. No vibration, no problem. And turn it up now to maximum revs. Again, like turning a solid piece of wood, and you'll see here the finish off the tool is very acceptable. So I think we can safely say with a piece of wood this size, between centres, you can virtually turn at any speed you like quite safely. Obviously wearing full face shield, I'm not going to keep harping on about that, but it has very little effect on the stability, if you like, of your lathe. It does depend on the size of your lathe, but a piece of wood this size, put between centres, even if it's not perfectly central, isn't going to cause you much of a problem. So now on here there's another piece, virtually the same sort of length. It's 150 by 70. It's already round and it only weighs 0.5 of a kilo. It's quite a dense wood. It was very kindly given to me by a friend of mine who visits from Australia, and I'm not quite sure what it is. It might be gum, I'm not sure. However, the point I'm making here is that, again, between centres you can turn this. I mean, it's not perfectly round actually as it happens, but you can turn it right up to maximum without a problem. But even a small piece of wood like this, what I've done, I've put 3 different centres here, so we're going to put it slightly off centre, and the point of doing this is to show you that even a small piece of wood, when not central, can have quite an effect on the stability of your lathe and the vibration. Okay, so again, making sure your lathe is down to 0. There's nothing happening now, it's okay, it's okay. Now I'm turning it up. Now I've gone to just 600 revs and it's starting to vibrate. If I can bring that down into camera, you can see the light is vibrating. Okay, now if I go through, it's starting to vibrate quite a bit now. Now I've turned it up to 988 revs and there is barely any vibration at all, and you can quite safely move that up to a decent speed for turning. 1300 revs, give you a good cut, no problem. So even a small bit of wood like that, when it's out of balance, can cause vibration even on a lathe my size. And mine, it by no means is the biggest lathe you can get, but it's 178 kilos, so it's quite stable. Now if you remember, at 580 odd revs I think it was, it started to vibrate. Now if we put it even more out of kilter, for want of a better word, on the 3rd axis if you like, always make sure you're standing out of the line of fire, and we turn him on. Now I'm doing 200 and you see the light. Where is the light? There it is. Okay, so we've got no vibration there. Now I'm turning it up from 200. Now at 600 revs, even on my lathe, that's starting to vibrate quite a lot. Now can I go through that safely? The answer is yes. I'm now doing 1200 revs and there's virtually no vibration at all. So you can, in certain instances, increase your speed through that initial vibration. But by no means am I advocating that as a rule of thumb, because it can be downright dangerous, especially with bigger bits of wood. When you're between centres, you're actually at your safest turning situation, if you like, because you have grip of the piece on 2 points, not just in a chuck held by the jaws. Now I've got a piece of ash bark on, by no means in balance. It's 140 by 100 mil and it weighs just over a kilo. Okay, now let's just see how that reacts. At the moment, quite nice, 500 revs. Right, now we're starting to get a bit of vibration. We'll put that there. Yeah. Now I'm starting to get a slight bit of vibration. But again, here, if I'm going to be turning this at, let's say, 800 revs, there's no vibration to speak of. I can turn that quite nicely, but it's still a bit clunkety clunk, so I really would like to increase the revs. Now, can I do that safely? I'll stand out of the line of fire, as I say, and increase the revs. Now that's quite well balanced. I mean, we're up to 1500 revs, 1600 revs. So this piece of wood, you could turn it whatever you like, but if you hear again the difference in the sound and the quality of cut, a lovely, easy turn. And a nice quality of cut, considering we're turning through bark and it is not even. So that piece of wood, because it's not really out of balance in its natural state, and I found the closest I can to centre, you could turn that virtually at any speed you feel comfortable with. But a lot of people will sort of insist almost in turning at a speed which you can turn at, but it really is not necessary with a piece of wood, in my opinion, this size, to turn so slowly. It's making the whole experience very unpleasant and not giving you a very good cut, and not getting the job done as easily as it could be. So now we have a bigger piece on. This is a piece of oak. It is very dry, very old. It's got a few cracks in it, as you'd expect. Now this weighs 3.8 kilos and is 250 by 150, so a much bigger piece. Found the centre, and we'll see how speed affects this. Now the same thing with whatever you're turning, the faster you turn, the better the cut is going to be. But there are certain situations, and this isn't one of them, I don't think, that you can go through the wobble and get to a higher speed where the turning experience is pleasant, but you have to use common sense. So here we are, 200 revs. I think this is going to be fairly stable actually. Now it's starting to vibrate at 580 revs. Now I'm doing 1000 revs and I've gone virtually through the vibration, not a problem at all. And if I should want to, I could turn at a higher speed. But there comes a point when, as long as you're getting the cut you want, that you don't need to go any higher. There's no point. So, as I say, here we go in at 300 revs. We've got to turn this to round. I'm using a bowl gouge with all these, so it's the same tool. I'm not using a spindle roughing gouge. So again, we start. Clunk, 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 clunk. Not a very nice experience. And certainly I don't suppose a very nice quality of cut either. No. And it's not necessary. Look, you see, I mean, this is very dry, punky and what have you, but that's not the point. Let's turn up to, gone through that vibration of around 500 revs. So we're now doing 1200 revs. Listen to the difference. even that punky bit is quite smooth, much better quality of cut, no tear out, and we're starting to get it to round. Now the thing is here that, again, it can be quite intimidating, as it does sound like a propeller, and these are things which have effects on new turners especially, and turners that haven't been turning too long. But if you apply the same technique, the same basic principles, you should be okay. Make sure that, and you get no points for what Captain Eddie Castlin calls hero point, hero moves. Now I'm doing 1500 revs, and again, listen to the cut. And when you're turning like this, when the things are out around and it's a large piece, even a small piece, you keep an eye on the ghosting here, and you can see exactly where you're cutting. Now even this piece of punky soft bit here, the actual finish is really good in comparison to when it was going a lot slower. So there's another example of how speed affects your turning. Now we've got a fairly big baby on here, 4 kilos in weight, 280 millimeters long by 200 wide at its longest, at its widest point here. We've got 3 growth parts here from the trunk. It's very unbalanced. I haven't found the center as such. All I've done is look at it to see if that's fairly balanced, and let's see how speed affects this. Now this, I suspect, you'll have to be very careful if you actually do in the beginning go through that wobble point. Now I promise you I haven't actually tried to work out the centre of this, I've just done it by eye. Now here we are at starting to get vibration now at 400 revs. Now the vibration's getting quite bad. Now it's getting ridiculous at 500 revs. Now I'll be honest with you, I personally wouldn't attempt to go through that wobble point at this stage. I would possibly alter the mounting points here to try and get it a bit more balanced. But if I'm going to try and do a piece like this, what I would do is I'd have to persevere with that lower rev because of safety. And I wouldn't attempt at this stage of the turning to increase the revs through the wobble, because I think that would be irresponsible. And okay, I'm relatively new to turning, 7 years, but even I would feel uncomfortable with going through a wobble point, as I call it, when my lathe is already starting to want to move on the floor. So again, this particular piece would not be turned at more than 475 revs, and I would put up with a little bit of vibration, and we'll just see what sort of a cut. I mean, this would be going on to a chuck anyway, so what I would be doing is working on the tenon immediately, forming the tenon, and then putting it in the chuck, bringing up the tailstock, and then starting to work on it and increasing the speed as it becomes more balanced. But just to give you an idea of what you'd have to work with something like this, bearing in mind you're going to be quite a long way, you've got a lot of air here, so we're starting it at the 400 revs. I mean, this is not going to be a pleasant experience. Now you notice it's slow up there. I have it between stem centres, and that is a very safe way of doing of mounting a piece like this, because if you get not a catch, but if you go in too deep in the cut, it will slip its moorings, as it were, and it prevents having a nasty catch. That's just me personally. Okay, so I think we can safely assume that there are limits to the safety aspect of going through the wobble zone, and this is one of those where you have to persevere until you get it more balanced. So now I've got a small bowl blank. It's 40mm by I've forgotten how, I think it's about 8 inches, something like that. Yeah, it's about 210, 220 mil across. It's a hardwood of some sort. It's fairly in balance, but again, we'll see what you see at that size and that weight. I'm up to 400 revs, and there's not a problem. So that sort of a size, you haven't got any speed issues. You've got no wobble to speak of. But again, the same principle applies. The first thing you want to do, people say, why do you bother truing at the edge if you're going to be taking it away? Well, the idea of doing that is to balance your blank as much as you can to increase your speed to a speed that is going to benefit your turning. So the first thing you do is round off the edge and then face, because then you've got two areas which are flat and square, and that means you can increase your speed to a speed that you're looking to attain. But again, if you start off with a low speed on this particular blank of no weight, what is the weight? Yeah, it's just over half a kilo, 0.7 of a kilo. So again, you're starting to do work on the edge here to true it up. It's a clunkety clunkety clunk again. So yes, if we can increase the speed. Now I'm doing 1300 revs. Listen to this. Much better. So again, the speed is your friend in my opinion, but as I've said, there are many caveats attached to that. Another thing you can do until you true it up is bring up the tailstock for support. You don't have to put massive pressure on there, but again, you're effectively turning between centres while you're truing up the edge here, and even while you're truing up the majority of the face. There's no problem with that. And then when you've got it to a more balanced situation, you remove the tailstock and get rid of the little nub in the middle, and then do whatever you want to do. So you've got all those options, but speed is definitely a benefit. Now again, gone up in size. A nice sycamore blank, 2 kilos in weight, 280 by 60 for the dimensions, slightly bigger, fairly balanced. Let's just see what the speed has on that. Again, as I said before, bring up your tailstock, no problem, extra security. Now you're effectively turning between centres. So I've got it on a screw chuck and I've got the tailstock up. So I've got it between 2 points. Stand out of the way, start up the lathe, and again we have got no vibration at 500 revs. Now when I go up to 540, 600, I'm starting to get vibration. Now do I want to, this is what you have to be asking yourself, do I need extra speed there? Let's just try it at that. So 600 revs, back off a little bit. Virtually no vibration, 530 revs. Am I happy with that to get this in balance? Not really. So now I've got the wobble 600 working through it. Now I'm up to 1100 revs. Try it again. That's better. Better experience, better cut, getting rid of more wood. I could actually turn this blank. I wouldn't go any higher than I am there now, I don't think. 1500, 1400 revs. And getting the job done quite satisfactorily. And again, you can face up the front a little bit quicker. Front's not too bad on this actually, but the point I'm making is that yes, increasing the speed to a safe level and a comfortable level will benefit the experience that you have and the results that you achieve. Another piece of sycamore, again gone up in size now. This one weighs in at 2 kilos and oh, I'm sorry, beg your pardon, 3 kilos. Weighs in at 3 kilos and is 304 by 50, so a bigger blank. And again, starting off at 0. And the only reason I'm doing this is just to show you that. Now here again at about 500 revs I'm getting vibration. Do I want to go through it? Yes, I can go through it. Up to 1000 revs now, vibration has subsided, so I know unlikely it's going to cause any problems any higher, but I'm at 1300 revs, which is more than enough to do my truing up and even actually to do the turning on. So again, with faceplate work as they call it, or when it's mounted in the chuck, a bowl which is already been relatively rounded, you can go through that wobble point quite safely with care and caution. Now we've got a bigger piece on. This weighs 6 kilos. It's a hardwood. I'm not quite sure what it is. I was given it very kindly by a guy called Paul Light a couple of years ago at UKIS, and I turned it in. I just put it on the bandsaw, turned it into a bowl blank. It's 306mm by 80mm, so quite a beefy blank, weighs 6 kilos. And let's just see what effect speed has on this one. Again, fine, starting a bit of a vibration now at 450 revs. Now there's a lot of wood on here, so what do? Stand out the line of fire, increase the revs a little bit. Now we've got a real wobble going, 600 revs. Do I want to go through that? I'll try. Now I've gone to 1200 revs, there's very little vibration. From a personal point of view, I would be happy to keep it there and do my truing up at that sort of a level. But as I say, if you're not happy at doing what I've just done there, no need to do it. Just take lighter cuts and it'll take a little bit more time, which is not a problem. There's no race, you're not in a race. And when you're doing something like this, my advice is always bring the tailstock up without exception, because you have that extra security. So yes, speed obviously affects a big piece like this. It is more susceptible to become unbalanced on the lathe because of its size and the forces that work with a bigger piece of wood and a heavier piece of wood. And the last piece of wood for this demonstration, if you like, is a piece of ash. It's been cut circular-ish, still got the bark on. Must probably be making its way into a natural edge bowl at some stage, but although circular, quite unbalanced insofar as you've got the dips here, etc. So it's not a perfect bowl blank, if you like. There's a couple of cracks in it. It's not quite dry yet, but it's nearly there. Now this weighs 3.5 kilos. It's 240 mil across its widest part and 180 deep at its highest bit. So let's just see what effects speed has on this, and what, if anything, I can do to improve the turning experience. Again, as I keep saying, at the risk of sounding really boring, always stay out of the line of fire until you've got to a stage where you're happy. Now on this we're experiencing a small amount of vibration at 500 revs. Now it's starting to vibrate at 580, quite a lot. Now it's really starting to vibrate at 600 revs. Now this is the point where I have to make the decision, obviously. Do I go through it, or do I persevere at this level? Well, you try it and see if it gets worse. No, it doesn't. 700 revs, it's starting to subside. 800 revs, 900 revs, 1000 revs, very small vibration, not rocking the lathe as such, just a little bit of vibration. You know it's on there. In my opinion, especially with the tailstock up, perfectly safe to turn with, and just to show we could go higher. 1300 revs, I would most probably call that a day. There's a very small amount of vibration, no problem at all. As I say, it's between centres. I'd be quite happy to turn it at that speed. But as I say, if you're not happy increasing the speed, don't. Well, I hope some of you found that of some interest. I stress again, as I always do, and I think you have to, it is my opinion, it is my view, and I just wanted to show you some different scenarios, and my take on the matter, if you like, and that's a personal opinion, is that the faster you turn, the better the experience, to a point, and using common sense. And as long as you're comfortable doing that and you're happy that your safety standards are met, if you like, then go ahead. If you turn too slowly with out of round spindles, I personally think that could be more catch worthy than if you increase the speed, because the air you're turning at is coming through quicker, so it's more like a solid object as opposed to one with gaps in. But that's just my view. And where you can, when things are not as balanced as you'd like, always bring up your tailstock for extra support. That is another thing, and I do that to this very day when I can, because why not? It's a safety precaution. It gives you more safety, gives you more security, and then that gives you more confidence. Don't become overconfident, but it gives you that more confidence, so you're not hanging on to your tool for grim death, and that in itself can cause problems, as I'm sure a lot of you have found out. So enjoy your turning, turn safe. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers now.